Secrets of Coins, revealing the rare coins in history, disclosed.
The Beatles made their first trip to America. The Civil Rights Act was signed into law. Lyndon B. Johnson was president after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The Vietnam War was escalating. And in that same year, the United States Mint struck the last circulating quarters made of 90% silver. The 1964 Washington quarter isn't just money. It's a piece of history, marking the end of an era. Let's start with the basics. The 1964 quarter weighs 6.25 grams. It measures 24.3 millimeters across. Its composition is 90% silver and 10% copper. That gives it about 0.18 troy ounces of silver content. The obverse shows John Flanagan's portrait of George Washington, with liberty above, the motto, "In God We Trust," to the left, and the date 1964 below. The reverse carries the bold eagle perched on arrows, framed by olive branches, a symbol of strength and peace. And the mint mark? The D for Denver is found on the reverse just below the wreath. Now let's talk about mintages. In 1964, the Denver Mint struck over 704 million quarters. The Philadelphia Mint produced another 560 million without a mint mark. Together, that's more than 1.2 billion quarters, the highest mintage in U.S. history up to that point. Why so many? Because Americans were hoarding silver coins. With silver prices rising, people were saving every quarter, dime and half they could get. To meet demand, the Mint struck record numbers of coins in 1964, before switching to clad coinage in 1965. So what are they worth today? In circulated condition, a 1964 quarter is usually worth $5 to $7 just for its silver content. In about uncirculated condition, values rise to $10 to $15. In Mint State 63, prices can reach $25 to $40. At MS-65, values climb to $75 to $150. At MS-67, the finest examples have sold for over $1,500 at auction. Now let's move to varieties and errors. The most famous is the 1964 double die obverse. On these coins, doubling is visible on the motto, "In God We Trust," and sometimes on the date. These can bring hundreds of dollars depending on condition. There are also repunched mint marks, where the D was stamped more than once, slightly misaligned. These are collectible and can bring $50 to $200. Other mint errors, like off-center strikes, double strikes, and clipped planches exist as well. Depending on severity, they can range from $50 to several $100s. Now let's place this coin in historical context. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. It was only meant to be a one-year commemorative coin, but the design proved so popular that it became the permanent quarter. By 1964, silver was vanishing from circulation. The Coinage Act of 1965 would end silver dimes and quarters, replacing them with copper-nickel clad coins. That makes 1964 the last year you could find silver quarters in your pocket change. Back then, a quarter had real buying power. It could get you a gallon of gas, a loaf of bread, or even a movie ticket. That shows how important these coins were to everyday life. Now let's talk about finding them. 1964 quarters don't usually show up in change anymore, but they are still common in old jars, rolls, and collections. Because so many were saved, they're easier to find than earlier dates. But high-grade mint state coins, and especially error varieties, are much tougher to locate. When it comes to selling, circulated coins are usually sold for silver melt value. Uncirculated examples can be sold online, at coin shows, or through reputable dealers. Rare doubled dies and high-grade specimens should be certified by PCGS or NGC and sold at major auctions like Heritage or Stack's Bowers to achieve top dollar. The bottom line is this: the 1964 Washington quarter isn't rare in most grades, but it's historically important. It represents the very last year of everyday silver quarters in America. Most are worth just a few dollars, but gems and errors can be worth hundreds or even thousands. So the next time you come across a 1964 quarter, check the mint mark, study the details, and don't forget, this was the final chapter of silver, circulating quarters in U.S. history. That's the story of the 1964 D Washington quarter. Silver, history and the end of an American era. America was changing. President Richard Nixon resigned that year after the Watergate scandal. Inflation was climbing, the Vietnam War was ending, and gas prices were hitting hard. And in the middle of all that, the U.S. Mint struck the 1974 D Washington quarter, a coin that millions of people carried in their pockets every day, and one that still sparks collector interest today. Let's start with the basics. The 1974 D quarter weighs 5.67 grams. It measures 24.3 millimeters across. Its composition is copper-nickel clad, meaning it has outer layers of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. The obverse shows John Flanagan's portrait of George Washington. The inscriptions are Liberty above, the motto In God We Trust to the left, and the date 1974 below. The reverse features a bold eagle with spread wings, perched on arrows surrounded by olive branches, and the mint mark D for Denver is located on the obverse, to the right of Washington's ponytail. Now let's talk about mintage. The Denver Mint struck over 353 million quarters in 1974. The Philadelphia Mint made another 801 million, and the San Francisco Mint produced proof issues for collectors. So in total, more than 1.1 billion quarters were dated 1974. With such huge numbers, you might think they're worthless. And in most cases, yes, a 1974 D quarter in circulated condition is worth only face value. But the story doesn't end there. So what are they worth? A circulated 1974 D is typically worth 25 cents. In about uncirculated condition, maybe 50 cents to $1. In Mint State 63, prices are usually $5 to $10. At MS65, values climb to $20 to $40, and superb MS67 examples can bring $400 to $800 at auction. The very finest graded MS67 Plus or MS68 have sold for over $2,000. The key is condition. With so many struck, finding flawless gems is much harder than it seems. Now let's move to errors and varieties. The most famous error, involving 1974 quarters, is the 1974 D struck on a 40% silver planche. These planches were meant for 40% silver Eisenhower dollars, but a few were mistakenly used for quarters. If you find one, you've hit the jackpot. At auction, they've sold for $5,000 to $10,000 or more. Other collectible errors include off-center strikes, often worth $50 to $200 depending on how far off-center they are. Double strikes where the design appears twice. These can sell for $100 to $500. Clipped planches where a piece of the blank is missing. These often bring $20 to $100. And transitional planche errors, like being struck on the wrong metal blank, which can fetch thousands. Now let's place the 1974 D quarter into historical context. The Washington quarter had been in use since 1932, and by 1974 it was already more than 40 years old. The design was so familiar that people barely noticed it anymore. But the times were turbulent. Watergate dominated headlines. The economy was under stress, and Americans were just adjusting to the fact that silver was gone from circulating coins. The clad quarter of 1974 represented stability, a coin you could trust to still be in your pocket tomorrow, even as the country faced change. So how can you find them today? In circulation, they're still common, but most are heavily worn. Look through bankrolls, pocket change, and coin jars. High-grade mint state examples are much scarcer and usually found in old original rolls or mint sets. Always check for errors, especially unusual weight or color, which could indicate a rare silver planche strike. And what about selling? Circulated examples are fine to spend. Mint state coins, especially graded MS65 or higher, can be sold on eBay at coin shows or to specialized dealers. Rare errors like the silver planche strike should be certified by PCGS or NGC, then sold through major auction houses such as Heritage, Stack's Bowers, or Great Collections. The bottom line is this: The 1974 D Washington quarter may look common, but condition and errors make all the difference. Most are worth just face value, but superb gems and rare silver planche mistakes can be worth thousands. So the next time you see a 1974 D quarter, don't dismiss it as ordinary change. Look closely, weigh it, study the details. Because what seems like just another coin from the 1970s might actually be a hidden treasure. That's the story of the 1974 D quarter. Common at first glance, but a coin with hidden gems, errors worth thousands, and a piece of history from a turbulent year in America, a year of triumphs and tragedies. The civil rights movement was at its peak. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy were assassinated. The Vietnam War divided America. And in the middle of it all, everyday people carried a new kind of quarter in their pockets, the 1968 Washington quarter. This was not just another coin. It marked a major turning point in U.S. coinage. Let's start with the basics. The 1968 quarter weighs 5.67 grams. It measures 24.3 millimeters in diameter. Its composition is copper-nickel clad, 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. The obverse shows George Washington's portrait by John Flanagan. Above his head is Liberty. To the left, the motto, "In God We Trust," and below, the date 1968. The reverse shows the bold eagle, wings spread, perched on arrows, framed by olive branches. Around the rim, United States of America, e pluribus unum, and $quarter. Now, mint marks. From 1965 through 1967, mint marks disappeared to discourage hoarding during the coin shortage. But in 1968, mint marks came back. For the first time in years, you could once again see the D for Denver or the S for San Francisco. Philadelphia coins still had no mint mark, and the location of the mint mark was new too, on the obverse, just to the right of Washington's ponytail. So what were the mintages? Philadelphia struck about 220 million with no mint mark. Denver struck 101 million with the D. San Francisco produced around 3 million proofs with the S. That's over 324 million quarters in total. Now let's talk about values. Most 1968 quarters you see today are well worn and worth only face value, but condition makes all the difference. In circulated grades, 25 cents. About uncirculated, 50 cents to $1. Mint State 63, $2 to $5. Mint State 65, $15 to $30. High-end Mint State 67, $400 to $700. And the very finest MS67 Plus or MS68 coins have topped $2,000 at auction. Proof coins are another story. A regular 1968 S proof sells for $5 to $10. Cameo proofs with frosty devices and mirror-like fields can bring $50 to $200. Deep cameo proofs, the rarest and most desirable, can fetch $500 to $1,000 or more. Errors and varieties make things even more exciting. Some 1968 quarters show doubled dies, especially on Liberty and In God We Trust. These can sell for hundreds of dollars depending on grade. Other errors include off-center strikes worth $50 to $200, double strikes often selling for $100 to $500, clipped planches bringing $20 to $75, and the rarest of all, transitional errors, a quarter struck on a leftover silver planche. If you ever find one, it could be worth thousands. Now let's place this coin in history. The Washington quarter began in 1932 as a one-year commemorative for Washington's 200th birthday, but it was so popular it became the permanent design. For decades, quarters were made of silver, but in 1965 that all changed. Silver was rising in value, and Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965. Quarters switched to clad composition. From 1965 to 1967, the mint removed mint marks to stop people from hoarding coins. By 1968, the mint was ready to restore them. And that's why the 1968 quarter is important. It was the first regular year where mint marks returned in a new location. So how can you find them today? Check old change jars and piggy banks. Many people saved quarters from the 60s. Buy rolls from the bank and search for high-grade examples. Proofs often turn up in original government proof sets from 1968. And selling tips. Common circulated coins are usually only worth face value. Mint state and proof coins can be sold on eBay, at coin shows, or through coin dealers. Rare double dies, high-grade proofs, or unusual errors should be sent to PCGS or NGC for grading, then sold through major auctions like Heritage, Stax Bowers, or Great Collections. So here's the bottom line. The 1968 Washington quarter may not look rare, but it tells a big story. It was the first year mint marks returned. It was part of the new clad coinage system. It carried America through one of its most turbulent years. Most examples are worth only 25 cents, but gems in MS-67 cameo or deep cameo proofs and rare errors can be worth hundreds or even thousands. So the next time you see a 1968 quarter, don't overlook it. It's more than pocket change. It's history. It's the return of mint marks. And it's proof that even an ordinary coin can carry an extraordinary story. That's the 1968 quarter, a coin of change, both in metal and in America itself. A new decade was beginning. The United States had just entered the Korean War. Families were buying their first televisions. Cars lined up at gas stations where a gallon cost just 18 cents. And in that year, the San Francisco Mint struck a silver coin that still fascinates collectors today, the 1950 Washington quarter. Let's begin with the basics. The 1950 quarter weighs 6.25 grams. It has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. It's made of 90% silver and 10% copper, which means every coin contains about 0.18 troy ounces of pure silver. The obverse shows George Washington's portrait, designed by John Flanagan. The word liberty stretches across the top. To the left is the motto, "In God We Trust." Below is the date, 1950. On the reverse, a bold eagle spreads its wings while perched on arrows, surrounded by olive branches of peace. At the bottom, $quarter tells us the denomination. And the mint mark S for San Francisco appears just below the wreath. Now the mintage, the San Francisco Mint struck just over 28 million quarters in 1950. That might sound like a lot, but compared to later decades, it's small. For context, Philadelphia made 24 million quarters that year, and Denver struck 21 million. So the San Francisco issue is the scarcer of the three. What about values today? A typical circulated 1950 is worth $7 to $10, based mostly on silver content. In about uncirculated grades, values rise to $12 to $20. Mint State 63 examples often bring $40 to $60. At Mint State 65, prices climb to $120 to $180. Superb MS-67 examples can reach $1,000 to $2,500. And the very finest, MS-68 coins have sold for $10,000 or more at major auctions. But here's something important: strike quality. San Francisco quarters from this era are often weakly struck. Details on Washington's hair and the eagle's breast feathers can look flat. That's why sharply struck coins with full detail are so prized. They are far harder to find, and collectors pay big premiums for them. Let's talk errors and varieties. Repunched mint marks, RPMs. Some 1950 quarters show the S punched more than once, leaving a shadow or doubling effect. Depending on condition, these can sell for $50 to $200 or more. Double dies, a few minor double die obverse and reverse varieties exist. Even small examples can sell for $100 or higher. Mint errors, off-center strikes, double strikes, and clipped planchets exist. These pieces often bring $50 to several $100s, depending on severity. Now let's put the coin in its historical context. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. It was meant to be a one-year commemorative but quickly became permanent. From 1932 to 1964, all Washington quarters were made of 90% silver. By 1950, America was booming after World War II, but also entering new conflicts abroad. The quarter you carried in your pocket had real purchasing power. With just one coin, you could buy a gallon of gas, a loaf of bread, or a movie ticket. Today, the silver alone is worth more than 20 times face value. So how can you find them? Search through old family change jars, coin albums, or inherited collections. State sales and flea markets are good sources, especially for silver coins. Dealers often sell junk silver by weight, and sometimes 1950s quarters get mixed in. For high-grade pieces, coin shows, certified auctions, or trusted dealers are your best bet. Now, selling tips. Common circulated 1950s quarters usually sell close to their silver melt value. Uncirculated coins, especially those with sharp strikes, should be graded by PCGS or NGC to realize full value. Rare RPMs or top-grade gems are best sold through major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, or Great Collections. The bottom line. The 1950s Washington quarter isn't the rarest silver quarter, but it is a key collectible. Its smaller mintage, weak strike quality, and potential value in high grades make it especially interesting to collectors. Circulated coins are worth just a few dollars, but in mint state prices jump quickly. And the finest known examples, coins graded, MS-68, have crossed into the five-figure range. So the next time you spot a 1950s quarter, don't think of it as just another piece of old silver. Think of it as a snapshot of 1950 America, a time of booming families, rising tensions, and silver in every pocket. That's the story of the 1950s Washington quarter. A coin of silver, a coin of history, and for some lucky collectors, a coin of real treasure. A year of big changes in America. Disneyland opened its gates in California. Rosa Parks refused to give up her bus seat in Montgomery, sparking the civil rights movement. Rock and roll was exploding onto radios, everywhere with Elvis Presley and Chuck Berry. And while all this was happening, the United States Mint was quietly producing a silver coin that collectors still treasure today. The 1955 Washington quarter. Basics of the coin. The 1955 quarter was part of the silver era. Each coin weighs 6.25 grams, with a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. The composition is 90% silver and 10% copper, which means each coin contains about 0.18 troy ounces of pure silver. Even a worn example today has value simply because of its silver content. The design was created by John Flanagan. On the obverse, you see George Washington's portrait. Above his head, liberty stretches across the rim. To the left, "In God We Trust" is clearly written, and below, the date, 1955. The reverse shows a bold American eagle with wings outstretched, perched on a bundle of arrows, and surrounded by olive branches. United States of America arches across the top. E pluribus unum is just under it, and quarter dollar is written at the bottom. Now let's move to mintages. Mintages. In 1955, quarters were struck at only two mints, Philadelphia and Denver. Philadelphia produced 18.5 million coins. Denver made just 3.1 million coins. That Denver issue, the 1955 D quarter, is one of the lowest mintages in the Washington quarter series. Collectors consider it a semi-key date. Value and prices. Let's talk money. For the Philadelphia 1955 quarter, circulated examples are worth $7 to $10, mainly for silver. Mint State 63 coins often sell for $20 to $30. Mint State 65 examples reach $70 to $100. And superb MS-67 coins can sell for $1,000 or more at auction. For the scarcer 1955 D quarter, circulated coins bring about 8 to 15. Mint State 63 sells for around $40 to $60. Mint State 65 examples jump to $150 to $250. MS-67 coins often sell for $2,000 to $3,000. And the very finest MS-68 pieces, rare, almost perfect coins, and have sold for $10,000 and higher. This is where condition rarity comes in. Most quarters struck in 1955 were used in everyday transactions. Finding one in gem condition with full luster and no wear is extremely difficult. That's why prices climb so high for top-end pieces. Errors and varieties. Now let's look at varieties and mint errors. Repunched mint marks, RPMs, on some 1955 D quarters. The D mint mark was punched into the die more than once, leaving a shadow effect. These RPMs are collectible, with values from $50 to $200 depending on grade. Doubled dies. There are minor doubled die obverse and reverse varieties. Strong doubling is rare but can bring $100 or more. Striking errors. Off-center strikes. Double strikes and clipped planches exist. These can sell from $50 up to several $100s, depending on the severity. Collectors love error coins because they stand out as one-of-a-kind pieces. Historical context. The Washington quarter was introduced in 1932 to honor George Washington's 200th birthday. It was supposed to be a one-year commemorative, but the design became permanent. From 1932 until 1964, every Washington quarter was struck in silver. By 1955, America was in the middle of a post-war boom. Families were buying their first homes in new suburbs. Teenagers were dancing to new rock music. Gas was about 23 cents a gallon, and a quarter in your pocket had real purchasing power. With 25 cents, you could buy a gallon of gas or send a letter with enough left over for candy. And remember, the quarter itself contained silver. That makes these coins a piece of American history you can hold in your hand. How to find them? So how can you still find a 1955 quarter today? Start with change jars, old piggy banks, or inherited collections. Many families still have silver coins stashed away. Check estate sales and flea markets. Silver coins often show up in small boxes of old change. Coin dealers sometimes sell junk silver by weight, and 1955 quarters can turn up in those bags. For high-grade examples, coin shows, certified dealers, and major auctions are your best bet. Selling tips. If you want to sell a 1955 quarter, circulated pieces are usually sold at silver melt value. Higher-grade coins, especially mint-state examples, should be certified by PCGS or NGC to get full value. Rare RPMs, doubled dies, or superb MS-67 and MS-68 examples belong in auctions run by Heritage, Stax Bowers, or Great Collections. The big takeaway. So what's the bottom line on the 1955 Washington quarter? The Philadelphia issue is common in worn grades but valuable in gem condition. The Denver issue, with its tiny mintage of just 3.1 million, is a semi-key date and highly collectible. Most 1955 quarters are worth only a few dollars over silver value, but high-grade examples, especially the rare 1955D and MS-68, can soar into the five-figure range. Every coin tells a story. The 1955 quarter tells us about silver money, about a booming America, and about a coin that still shines in collections today. So next time you come across a 1955 quarter, don't just see a piece of change. See history, see silver, and maybe, just maybe, see treasure.